From Columbia, this is Sports Talk on the South Carolina Radio Network. Be a part of tonight's show. Call us at 800-956-7266 or email talkback@sportstalksc.com. Now, here are your hosts for Sports Talk, Phil Kornblut, Kevin McCrary, and Tom Hayes.
We just came out with a 9-game winning streak 4 days ago. And so it's the same team that won 9, same lineup, same team. So we're going through a little streak right now. We went through a good streak by winning 9. Now we're going with a 4-game losing streak that without scoring runs.
Yeah, the Braves threw it in reverse. They've dropped 4 straight after that 9-game win streak. Freddie Gonzalez and company will try to get it back on track as they look to salvage their final game in the Big Apple tonight. Kevin McCrary and the Professor Tom Hayes with you again tonight on Sports Talk. Kornblut enjoying the last little stretch of his vacation before he gets back into the fold with us next week as we move through the month of July. Glad you're with us again tonight. Looking forward to spending the next 120 minutes or so with you talking about anything and everything on our mind in the sports world, continuing to keep close tabs on what's happening to bring it to you in an delightful and enlightening and entertaining way.
Well, I just want to let everybody know I'm taking my talents to South Congaree.
No, Pro's taking his time. Yeah, still waiting on the LeBron James situation, Carmelo Anthony. I mean, it's that shows you just how easy it is for two people to just hijack the sports conversation in July. It doesn't take a lot in this part of July. I'm sure ESPN loves this. Don't announce yet. We want to talk about it all week long, but they're probably saying, SEC Media Day starting. We're going to start having football next week. We need to get this taken care of before the end of the weekend,
and of course,
it probably will.
And of course, LeBron is headed to the World Cup for the championship game on Sunday, so he wants to. You could tell.
You know what he should do?
He should announce why he's getting on the tarmac.
He should just say, if Argentina wins, I'm going to Cleveland, and if Germany wins, I'm staying in Miami. Just put it that way. It's that simple. Then the World Cup, Americans would actually probably really be into the World Cup final, despite the fact that there's no team. The United States isn't in it anymore. But no. Take that for what it's worth.
And I really didn't even know. It'll just tell you, I'm still learning soccer. I didn't know they had a third-place game. This afternoon.
Brazil has to show
their faces
got to go out there and
on the
play
pitch once again.
Yeah, that's pretty brutal for them. If they better win. I think they need to win. Otherwise, Brazil's probably just going to explode into itself and it'll cease to exist. Brazil will be a place that it'll be, like Atlantis. Remember that place in South America, Brazil, that hosted a World Cup but then was embarrassed twice and it just disintegrated?
Unbelievable.
It'll be like a dinosaur.
But
the only thing that'll be left are the skeletons of those World Cup stadiums they built that bankrupted the economy there for nothing for a third-place game in one of the most embarrassing defeats in sports.
Say it's Germany's cup.
You're going with the Germans. Yeah. Those European teams usually struggle in South America, but the way they played last week, hard to argue with that pick. We got a great show coming up. We'll tell you all about it. Take your phone calls, emails, tweets, everything, and more. We'll be right back.
Discussion. I said, he's staying home. He's not going anywhere. He's going to get the most money. They can rebuild around him. That will be his legacy. Will be to show that he can be the focal point of a continuing string of successes in Miami. And now I think he's going to Cleveland.
What you changed? You did a 180.
I did the last 24 hours. It's just too much noise. There's too much going on. Will he dare risk letting down all those people?
Not just letting them down, but crushing them. I'm with you, Bob. I thought the same thing up until about 48 hours ago.
Yeah.
And the thing that sort of sways me is this. If anybody in LeBron's camp, not LeBron himself, because LeBron has done a great job of saying nothing. People can't say LeBron has leaked anything.
Nothing, zero.
But LeBron's got smart people in his camp who understand public relations. They understand the relationship of LeBron.
It would be sweet if he went to the Vancouver Grizzlies or something like that.
Or from Ohio, right.
The Washington Bullets.
Could have come out and said, hey, this is not happening. This is overblown. It's overstated. Shh. They know reporters.
Dude, let him be side by side with Big Country, man. That'd be a great team.
They could have put the shush to this if it was necessary.
And Sharif Abdur-Rahim.
That hasn't happened. And so I have
Michael
now,
Dickerson.
like most of Northeast Ohio, bought into this, and I think he's going there too.
And the team could be pretty interesting, theoretically.
Especially, you mean without the trade or not? With the trade?
Ultimately. I'm a Veragio guy. We can have that discussion some other day.
All right.
That's a bell. We're done. Back to you.
All right, there's loads of fun there on the Twitter.
How would you know?
A parody account has been opened called LeBron's Lawn. Okay, LeBron's Lawn tweeted, "Source, you guys need to get off me." The next.
That's what ESPN's become,
like,
ladies and gentlemen.
Don't forget to fertilize.
Hope you're satisfied.
3 times a week.
I'm thirsty.
Get off me.
So LeBron is still a man without a team. Hear the advice one NBA legend had for the King and what LeBron's decision could mean.
Watch it be Marvitas Sabonis or somebody.
All the free agent frenzy coming up. Also, Clayton Kershaw, he's pitched 36 scoreless innings, and he's showing no signs of slowing down. Our insider weighs in on how long this streak could continue. Germany wants that World Cup title, but they'll need to get through that guy, Lionel Messi, in his first final. Our crew in Brazil on what he needs to do to join the greatest players of all time.
We've all been there, at sea in a white squall.
7:13.
Around like a piñata at a kid's birthday party. At which point you may find yourself asking, how do I keep my hair looking good?
Monte.
Axe recommends the messy look. Plunge a finger into a tub of Axe Messy Look paste. Mix, break, spin. And that's the messy look. Mind the hair. Upgrade to Axe Messy Look Styling, the easy way to superior style.
Sweat. It says I was here. I worked here. It says I only have so much to give before I have to take. What I lose, I want to get back. Sweat says, I earned this. Gatorade, created to help replace what you sweat out.
Introducing Nexium 24-Hour. Finally, the purple pill. The #1.
All right, gentlemen, here we go. Stand by.
Let's set the table for you. 800-956-7266 is a toll-free number. Reach out, grab a line. We'll take phone calls this segment. Little to no wait. 800-956-7266. You can also hit us up on Twitter at SportsTalkSC. Like us on Facebook, Sports Talk Radio Network, Facebook.com/Sports Talk Radio Network. And, of course, the website is SportsTalkSC.com. Lots of stuff there, stories, links to stories, audio, and links to listen to the show live and watch the show live. There's a video stream, a live video stream at the bottom of the page at sportstalksc.com. Coming up at the bottom of the hour, we will talk some college football. 49 days until the season opener for South Carolina against Texas A&M. 49 days, 51 days until Clemson plays Georgia. We'll have Travis Haney, who will be covering college football, again, for ESPN on a national level, but he's very familiar with South Carolina and Clemson. And he's also the former Braves reporter for Sports Talk, too. Another Sports Talk alumnus that is now working at ESPN. We send him to all sorts of pastures. So Travis will be joining us from Charlotte coming up shortly. But let's jump out to the phones here before we jump into news notes and other things. Lots to discuss tonight. Mike Morgan will be giving us a Braves report today. By the way, and it wasn't for lack of an effort by the Atlanta Braves, but Justin Upton did not get the fan vote. The vote Justin Up, whatever it was that I saw on my Twitter feed incessantly for the past several hours, did not work. Chris Sale Chicago White Sox pitcher, and Cubs first baseman Anthony Rizzo were the ones that picked up the votes.
All right, a Cubby gets there.
Yeah,
a
Chicago sweep, really.
Away.
You got a White Sox pitcher who's been hurt a lot this season, but very good in Chris Sale, and Anthony Rizzo gets in. All right, let's go out to the phones. Pope, where are we headed? Mark is going to lead us off tonight. He's in Sumter.
Gentlemen, good evening.
Hey, Mark.
Hey, just want to give my 2 cents on the LeBron James sweepstakes. Guys, I think he's going back to Cleveland, and me and some friends were laughing about it today. It's kind of like from the third Batman film, The Dark Knight Rises, when Catwoman tells Batman, you know, you've done everything for these people. What else do you owe these people? And I guess LeBron, he's sitting there saying, not yet. I haven't given him everything. So I think he's going back home because a friend of mine sent me a picture and email last night that there's 3 moving trucks at his house, and a Ferrari was being moved off the property. And ESPN just showed those same 2 trucks at his South Florida home, just 2 big yellow trucks. So, hey, if he's moving the Ferrari, then it looks like LeBron might be gone. If I'm a Miami fan, I'm very nervous right now. Hey, guys, I love your show. I just hang up and listen.
Yeah, appreciate it. I mean, people are trying to take any kind of sign right now, moving trucks. I haven't heard that one. That is always the standard go-to one, though, with a coach. Or, how many famous coaches have been looking for property on Lake Murray or Lake Hartwell over the years when it looked like Carolina or Clemson was going to be hiring a coach? You always hear these stories. I do tend to agree that he's going to go back to Cleveland, though, Tom, because I don't see how if you drug it out this long, is he really going to cut whatever is left of Cleveland sports fans' hearts out and, like, take a bite out of it like he did before?
Probably. He could. Because, see, here's my point about this. Cleveland has not done working yet, finished their work with drawing LeBron, because if you look at the roster is now consummated by Cleveland, they still don't have the pieces to win with LeBron. Everybody said, well, they got the #1 draft choice. Well, no, you're looking at an 18, 19-year-old kid. He's not ready for that. Kyrie Irving is not the type of guy that's good with LeBron James, because what? LeBron needs the ball. Who else needs the ball? Kyrie Irving. Irving is not a standstill jump shooter, which could facilitate LeBron still being the point forward. That's not going to happen. What has to happen is a trade has to be consummated, and if they bring in Kevin Love, then I say LeBron will give his amen. Because I can see what is one of the key points about Kevin Love. You saw it at UCLA his freshman year, hard to do it in Minnesota. The quick rebound and long outlet pass. And you could see rebound, Love, whoop to LeBron. I could see it. I can visualize it.
You can't make that move if you're Cleveland unless you know you're going to get LeBron.
That's the point.
Because if you do that, if you make that trade for Kevin Love, I'm sure he's going to say, all right, that's fine. I'm not going to sign a contract, a long-term deal. You'll get me for 1 year. If LeBron comes, I'll re-up. If not, I'm going to go to Los Angeles or Boston or New York or somewhere else after this season, and you're going to give up all these pieces. Now, Cleveland, there's a reason why they've had more #1 picks in the NBA draft than any team in the history of the NBA. It's because they're completely inept. They bungle move after move. Even with LeBron, they managed to bungle it, and he got out of town. They let that happen. They never gave him a reason to stay. And maybe LeBron's flighty. I mean, maybe that's the case. Maybe he's going to go back to Cleveland and leave Cleveland again in 2 years. Maybe he's going to go back to Miami and still thinks he'll finish his career in Cleveland. I don't know, but I know the way he's handling this, if he's not going back to Cleveland, is pretty goofy. I think Miami would probably give him max money now. I don't know what he's waiting for. I don't know what Carmelo Anthony. I mean, how long does it take to decide what you're going to do?
He's got 3 days, in my opinion. Well, let me put it this way. I think he's got 2.5 days, because Chris Bosh is not going to sit there waiting. Houston has 3 days to match Chandler Parsons. If they don't match Chandler Parsons, that means the money that Chandler Parsons would have got will go to Chris Bosh. because what is this, 40 years, $97 million or whatever. Houston is going to match the offer sheet if Bosh does not come to Houston, and that means that Bosh is probably coming back to Miami. And he's waiting to see what LeBron is going to say. He said, "LeBron, you better let me know something in 2.5 days, because if not, I'm going to Dallas. And you won't have me to go back to Miami with. You'll have McRoberts there, but I won't be there." So it'd be interesting to see what happens, who blinks first. If I'm Chris Bosh, I'll bolt and say, "LeBron, look, you sit there and just not make a decision. I'm going to Dallas."
Heading to Dallas.
Well, yeah, Houston. His
Parsons is
hometown
headed
is
to Dallas.
Yeah,
and that's and there hasn't been a lot of action with some of these bigger names because teams are waiting to see how everything's going to shake out. It's been a very strange NBA free agency. And you can't even sign with the team until tomorrow. That's the first day you can actually sign with the team. They put a moratorium on it.
Today.
Today's the 10th. So
the 10th.
But nobody's really doing it. I mean, because
the only person who signed is Steve Blake, who goes back to the Trailblazers for the third time.
Former Frank Martin.
Here's the interesting thing. Fans of the NBA notice one thing in all this frenzy. Who owns the trophy right now? San Antonio, right?
Yeah.
Have you heard San Antonio's name called in any of this nonsense? No. Doesn't that make you think that, this team does its own thing, builds from within, and wins titles, and they don't get into all this nonsense? Only thing they did was re-up Pops for a few more years. So
yeah, they re-up Pops, and they have their pieces all coming back, and they're still dangling a carrot out there for Pau Gasol, and that would be scary if they just added that piece to their puzzle. Pau, even with his diminishing skills, would be an asset to that team as a role player, and that's why they've managed to win. And they've also been able to do what they were hoping to do in Miami, where guys just don't make a big show about it. They say, you know what, I'm going to opt out. I'm going to take less money. Dirk Nowitzki did that in Dallas. A lot of players do that. Kobe Bryant didn't do it in Los Angeles. He said, I'm going to get mine. And he took, he's going to make, $30 million this year. And the Lakers are a little cash-strapped because of that.
Well, that's because he doesn't play Monopoly. When one person has all the money, what happens? Game over.
I think you can make a case for the teams that lose out on these sweepstakes. You build a team. I think more people should use the San Antonio blueprint of building their team and not giving max money to a superstar and then having no cast around them.
Messi. I was doing my best ESPN broadcast to pronounce Messi in a European way. It's funny that he's popping the game, couldn't care less. You figured out what kind of steroids your boy Kershaw's on yet?
watch list week continues in college football as more and more awards release their watch list. Today we had the Outland Trophy, which goes to the top interior lineman in college football, and the Bronco Nagurski Trophy, which goes to the top defensive player in college football. 3 USC offensive linemen on the Outland watch list. 3. Pretty impressive. A.J. Cann, Corey Robinson, and Brandon Shell, the 3 repping the Gamecocks on the Outland Trophy list. Now, if you combine that with the Remington Trophy, which Cody Waldrop was on, 4 out of the Gamecocks' 5 starters on the offensive line are up for preseason awards, or on preseason watch list for awards. It doesn't mean.
And college doesn't have a comeback player of the year award, do they? Because then they'd have Mike Matulis up for that. After he was lost last season and went down to, 240 pounds and had to regain the weight, and now he's the starting guard there, so it'd be interesting. If they had a comeback player, he'd be nominated for it.
It's been a while. I don't know that the Gamecocks have ever had 3 players on the preseason watch list for the
Not
Outland
offensive
Trophy
line,
on their
no
offensive
way.
line. Now, the Outland Trophy is not just for offensive linemen. It's interior linemen, offense or defense. So Clemson has Grady Jarrett on that list. Grady Jarrett has been very active on these watch lists. He's already been nominated for the what was the one Big Nerick Award earlier this week, and he's also on the Nagurski watch list along with 2 of his teammates, Vic Beasley and Stephon Anthony. So 3 Tigers on the Bronco Nagurski watch list, and Grady Jarrett is on that would be 3 watch lists for Grady Jarrett. I think he is leading all watch list members. And we gave you the cast that will be attending SEC Media Days for USC next week. Let's give you the players that are going to be accompanying Dabo Swinney to Greensboro for the ACC Media Day next weekend. It'll be quarterback Cole Stout, and it'll be defensive end Vic Beasley. So those are the 2 players that will be rolling into Greensboro for the ACC football kickoff next weekend, early next week. That kickoff starts on Sunday and goes through Monday. We'll have it covered for you here on SportsTalk.
Greensboro again?
They are in Greensboro. Okay. Yeah, at the Grand Over Resort is where they do it every year. It starts on the 20th and goes through the 21st. And, Cole Stout will be there. Famous Jameis is going to be there for Florida State. So I guess there's a lot of jokes I can make right now.
That was a man.
You know what? I'm going to be nice. Yeah, his
well, then I'll just set you up for a joke. What are they serving for hors d'oeuvres?
They should serve, crab legs, crab cakes. There's a lot of things.
Yeah,
there's a lot of different directions we can go with James Winston, but he's got the last laugh. He's got a Heisman Trophy and
for dessert, humble pie.
There you go. All right, we have Travis Haney, ESPN college football writer, joining us in our next segment. We're going to talk some college football, get his opinions on Jameis Winston, Clemson's defense, and USC this season.
All right, K-Mac Pro, stand by.
Get back to your phone calls and emails momentarily. Want to head out to the guest line and welcome in our old friend on Sports Talk, Travis Haney. Travis used to be the Sports Talk Braves reporter. Then he moved on to bigger and better things with the Post and Courier, then out to Norman, Oklahoma to cover the Sooners. And now with ESPN, we're going to talk some college football with Travis. Hope you're doing well, Trav.
Do you want me to talk about Dylan G's breaking ball last night against the Braves? I did happen to watch the game last night. They can't beat the Mets. There's my Braves report.
No, yeah. They can't beat the Mets. They were doing well until they went to New York. The House of Horrors continues at Citi Field for the Braves.
Need to get Chipper back if they want to beat the Mets up there, I guess.
Chipper, yeah, they could use Larry back in the lineup there. The chance. Well, all right, we're 49 days away from South Carolina and Texas A&M now, so I know everybody's getting geared up for football. And just your general thoughts when you look at how the SEC is going to play out this year. Everybody's shooting for Auburn, and the ACC. It looks like obviously everybody's shooting for Florida State.
Well, I know everybody here is really fired up about that game. It being the first SEC network game. I've been down in the studio, which is in the south part of Charlotte here, some in the last few weeks, and they're really getting things together. And there's just a really good buzz about the resources they put into that network. And I'm not trying to plug it. I think they're going to do a really good job with it. And I think for South Carolina to be on the first edition of that, it's kind of like it's a nice reward, I think, for all the Thursday night openers that South Carolina's had since Spurrier. So to start that off and play A&M, which is a really hot program nationally right now in terms of recruiting and obviously what they had last year in Johnny, it's a great start to the season, and hopefully I'll be able to be there. I'm not sure yet. And we're still trying to figure out the schedule, but hopefully I'll be there for that one. To your question, though, I think the SEC, if you look at it, you almost have to look at it like two different conferences at this point. And if you're starting with the East, it's just the fact that it's so wide open. And every team, including the Gamecocks, to me, has some flaws that they're going to have to overcome, and we'll see who gets better over the course of the season and what that means in October and November. So if you look at the West, I think it's kind of similar, except you throw Auburn into that mix with Alabama and LSU, and I don't think there's any question that it's still the strongest division in college football.
Now, as far as looking at it, first of all, the SEC network, it sounds good, but you can see one of the largest distributors still playing chicken in Time Warner. We'll see how that plays out at the end. But having been in Oklahoma and seeing what Oklahoma did in the Sugar Bowl to a sort of disinterested Alabama team, and I mean just rolled Alabama, and they were riding high, why do you think they took a flyer on Dorial Green Beckham? It looks like a troubled soul that they didn't need any part of with all the things that's happening in Oklahoma positively.
That's a really good question, Tom. And a lot of people that I've heard from out there aren't really sure why Bob Stoops would make a move like that. He's always tried to be someone who has operated above board when it comes to disciplining players or signing transfers like this one, and it really doesn't go along with what we've heard. But the one thing I would say is when I was out there in 2011, and so I covered the 2012 recruiting class, they really thought they had a shot to get Green Beckham instead of him going to Missouri. So I think the relationships that he had already with the receivers coach, Jay Norvell, who coached in the NFL and really has done a good job with their receivers at Oklahoma, I think that was a huge, huge piece of this. And if he weren't there, I don't think that they would have taken a chance on Green Beckham at all. But when you look at it from a football sense, they needed some sort of presence. And if they thought that he could play this fall or he would sit out and play next fall, that was something that they were comfortable doing because they lost in the last couple of years a couple of really reliable receivers. Even going back to when I was there, Ryan Broyles was one of the best receivers in the country. And, they have some serviceable guys. Jalen Saunders was pretty good, Fresno State transfer. They've got a kid, Sterling Shepard, who's okay this year, but they don't have that big name, big target receiver. So that's why they did what they did. But there's a lot of Sooners fans who I think it made him feel a little uncomfortable. And, if they can rehabilitate his career and his personal life, then they'll come off looking pretty good. But it definitely is a risk.
Well, the interesting thing, getting back to the SEC, can we at least initially say maybe this is the season that we go back to the future, if I may use that movie jargon, as we see so many older but inexperienced quarterbacks taking over at a lot of the SEC schools this year, including here in Columbia. Could you see a re-emphasis in the SEC on the running back position?
I think running back really for the last couple of years has been as good in the SEC as any conference in the country. And it's a good point that you make about the quarterbacks who are taking over in a lot of these positions. We're not talking about freshmen at Georgia or South Carolina or even Alabama that are going to be playing. We're talking about guys who have been on campus in the system. So while they're unknowns, at least they're not young. At least they know the offensive system in most cases. I guess at Alabama they have a new one. But, with Thompson, obviously Spurrier feels really good about it. Georgia people feel really good about Hudson Mason, although he wasn't great in their bowl game. The quarterback position has been a real cycle, I feel like, for the last 3 to 5 years in the SEC. It wasn't very good, and then the last couple of years it was excellent. And you see a lot of those guys are going to get a chance in the NFL if they aren't already. So I think, if you're in a position like South Carolina where you have a really good running back and you have a really good offensive line, and I guess you could say the same thing about Georgia, of course you should lean on those things that you do well, but the quarterback at some point is going to have to make plays. And to take that to South Carolina, a lot of the coaches I talked to were so, I wouldn't even have to ask about Connor Shaw. They were always really complimentary about him and what he did. Even when I was visiting coaches in Texas or Michigan or Wisconsin or California, they were all aware of how good Connor Shaw was. So I think their question is, if it's 3rd and 6 and you need 6 or 7 yards, is Thompson capable of making that happen? And I think that's what we really have to see out of him this year.
Everybody's talking about Clemson's defense, maybe the best defense they've had since the early 90s, going back to the Danny Ford era even. In your estimation, how does this defense stack up with the rest of the ACC and some of the other top defenses in the country?
I'm really high on them. I am. I think they have a chance to be as good as Florida State's, if that tells you anything, just because you've got 6 seniors on the defensive line. The linebackers are experienced. There's a decent amount of experience in the secondary, and then you throw Mackenzie Alexander in on top of that. And Venables is a good coach. I got to know him at Oklahoma, and I thought that was a really nice hire for Dabo when he had a chance to get him. And it took him some time. He's a really relentless recruiter, and I think that's paid off in addition to how he's developed what they already had. So I think when you start with that kind of a defensive line with Crawford when he's back from his suspension, with Jarrett, with Beasley, that's a really strong front. And I don't, like you said, I don't know that we've seen that from Clemson in a really, really long time, where the defense can kind of take the lead and the offense is the one that kind of has to hold serve. So I think they're really well suited in that league, because once you get past Florida State and maybe Notre Dame, if you count them just in the head-to-head games, not necessarily in the conference standings, I think they're a team that isn't getting talked about enough this year, because I think everybody is so obsessed with what they lost on offense. But if you trust Chad Morris at all and you realize what they have on defense, you see that that's a team that could really sneak up on people if it can survive that first month of the season, just having to play Georgia and South Carolina right out of the gate, or not South Carolina, but Georgia and Florida State right out of the gate. So, I think just that first month is really, if they can take 1 of 2 there and only carry 1 loss into the heart of the ACC season, I think they'd be really well positioned.
Travis, great stuff as always. We appreciate it. You can check Travis's stuff out on ESPN.com. He's got a very interesting read with his future power rankings that you can check out now on your ESPN Insider on ESPN.com. And we'll hopefully see you in Columbia next month, Travis.
Hope so. Good talking to you guys.
Appreciate it. Travis Haney joining us there. 49 days until the Aggies and Gamecocks clash at Williams-Brice Stadium, and again 51 until the Tigers and Bulldogs get it on between the hedges. Braves Report coming up. All right, the Braves are, they're going backwards right now. 9 games in a row on the good side, now 4 games in a row on the bad side. We're looking for somebody to blame. Let's blame Mike Morgan. He joins us now with our Braves report. Way to go, Mike. Way to mess this thing up.
You can't blame me. I've been off the last couple of days. I was in Boston watching another team that's struggling, the Red Sox at Fenway Park. So.
Oh, did you see the JBJ catch in person last night? Did you see that?
You know
one?
what? Actually, no. I was there the night before, and they did not have Bradley in the lineup. He did not play, so I just missed it by one day, unfortunately. But listen to a lot of sports talk up there, and as you can imagine, it's a disgruntled fan base, and now they're even turning on some of the younger players. I don't want to say they're turning on Bradley specifically, but I think they just feel like the guys that they have presently on the roster don't generate enough offense, so they're going to be shopping for a lot of new guys next year. But the good news for a guy like Bradley is that they're pretty much now already beginning rebuilding mode, so you're going to see their younger players get a lot more reps. And I think that could actually be a good thing for Jackie Bradley Jr.
Yeah, his bat will come around. The gloves there, his bat, I believe, will come around eventually. But speaking of needing to come around, because they're not playing for the future, they're playing for now. The Braves, we thought they were going to have a little momentum going into the All-Star break. They're building the wrong kind of momentum now.
Yeah, it's funny. This offense is so hard to figure out, although, as I've said a million times over, no matter how you slice it and dice it and twist it up and put perfume on it and package it, whatever you want to do to it, it's still not a great offense. And that's just not going to change this year. But it's good enough to make it to the postseason and perhaps even win some of the postseason. However, just when they start to figure out how to manufacture runs a little bit and cut down on the strikeouts somewhat, they go into this major home run drought. Do you realize in the last 136 innings, they've hit just 2 home runs, one by Justin Upton and one by Ryan Doman. So, they're just getting nothing in the power department from guys you're depending on. Obviously, Gaddis is a big reason he's hurt. Jason Hayward, no matter where you hit him, first, second, third, fourth, fifth, no power. B.J. Upton, no power. Guys that you were hoping to get more pop from in this lineup, obviously Freddie Freeman, he has gone into a power drought. So when you look at it, this is a team that led the National League in home runs a year ago. They rely still somewhat on hitting home runs, and quite simply, they have not been doing it.
And, of course, as you said, that puts a lot of pressure on the pitching staff, and you can almost go back to 1 or 2 pitches that Atlanta, a couple of games against the Mets here in New York, if they had to do all over again, maybe the Braves win some of those tough, tight ball games. But as you say, when you have to pitch so fine, it's very difficult as a pitching staff to gather any momentum if you don't know what kind of offense is going to show up day to day.
Yeah, it is. It all of a sudden now you're a perfectionist because you know you have to be to win because your offense hasn't been doing anything. So from that standpoint, it's added pressure. And I don't care how strong you are as a pitcher mentally, you always are aware of what the score is. And it's always easier to pitch ahead than when you're pitching when your team is trailing. So that's been the case for so many of these guys, no matter who you throw out there. Now, with that being said, let's not take this pitching staff completely off the hook. Mike Minor has not been good. Santana has cooled off. Tehran had a bad outing. He's entitled to one. It was still a really bad outing his last time up, and that's the guy you kind of call upon to be your stopper whenever you're on a losing streak. So we've already talked about the bullpen has not been as strong as it was a year ago. The rotation needs to get back to what it was in April and May.
Andrew Miller's been floated around in the AJC as a potential guy the Braves could target before the trade deadline. You might have seen a piece of him in Boston. What do you think about that potential move?
Yeah, I did see him in Boston. As a matter of fact, he pitched in 2 straight games up there. I remember him from North Carolina going up against the Gamecocks, a tall, lanky lefty, a former first-round pick of the Marlins who never really panned out as a starter and has now just become a middle reliever. I've said all along the Braves are going to make some type of move. It's not going to be a blockbuster, and in all likelihood it is going to be for another bullpen arm. So it'll help bolster a bullpen a little bit, but that's not the kind of move. If you think that the Braves are really in desperate need of something to turn this thing into their favor against the Nationals, that's not the move alone that's going to do it. It's a supplementary move, but they still need to play some better baseball.
Mike, we appreciate it. We'll catch up with you tomorrow night. Our Braves Report with Mike Morgan brought to you by Witt Suber of Home Shop Realty, where you pay less for more. Call 803-518-3888 today.
The steroid race. That baseball needs that.
I don't think he should have left Cleveland in the first place, but I think it'd be just great for him to go back home and finish his career. I think it'd be great for the city of Cleveland, and I hope he does it. LeBron's a great player. He's a great man, and I think he realized no matter how many championships he wins in Miami, it won't have the same effect if he's able to win a championship in Cleveland.
As you know, Kornblut's, as you may or may not already know, but now you're about to know, Kornblut's still on vacation, but recruiting, it doesn't take a vacation. No. We work recruiting like it's in a sweatshop somewhere in Indonesia. It never gets a break. And we'll give you a full-fledged recruiting report coming up later in the program. There will be a commitment coming down for somebody. A.J. Turner out of Centerville, Virginia, is going to announce today. You remember, this is a kid that was going to be on Tuesday, then it was going to be Thursday, then it was back to Tuesday, then it went back to Thursday. So we know it's going to be tonight, but we still don't know exactly when tonight, either 8 o'clock or 9:30. Yeah. He's down to USC, Clemson, Virginia, Ohio State, and Michigan State. So we will have that for you on our website, sportstalksc.com. When we do get it, we won't have it unless something goofy happens before the end of the show. But we will have recruiting and a full-fledged recruiting report and more on Mr. Turner and others coming up later in the program. The John Deere Classic, the final tune-up on the PGA Tour before the players head across the pond. Remember, we had former Clemson All-American Ben Martin on with us last night. He's going to play in his first British Open at Royal Liverpool next week. He shot an even par 71 today. He's 8 strokes behind the leader. Tommy Gainey, another South Carolina native, as I'm looking at the leaderboard, was at 1 under par. Your leaders are at 8 under. Zach Johnson, Rory Sabatini, and Brian Harmon, all at 8 under par. A few guys at 7 under. But that's where things are at the John Deere Classic, that final tune-up. And I don't think Tiger's playing in this one.
No.
So Tiger doesn't, he's like, I did okay. Not making the cut at Congressional. I'm good. He's just gonna. He's over in
he's got to check
Europe
the mileage on that back.
Yeah. Well, we'll see. I mean, maybe the Lynx style at Royal Liverpool will suit his game a little bit more. I don't think anybody will take the "I'll take Tiger Woods, you take the field" bet anymore. It'll be "I'll take Tiger Woods and you give me 10-1 odds, and you take the field."
Well, see, I'm old school when I think about joints, backs, and quick fluctuations in temperatures. And if Tiger goes out there, and let's say it's unseasonably warm in Liverpool, and he does great, and then the next day it's in the 50s or upper 50s, and then he goes back out there. I just think that, those fluctuations in temperature does not, you can't deal too well with a back you trying to loosen. I'd like to see how he lasts in England.
Speaking of Tiger, a pretty bad story. You don't know what it means. Nobody does, but it looks bad. A story being reported that Tiger Woods paid Alex Rodriguez's doctor $76,000 back in 2009. A-Rod's treble doctor that had a lot of links to HGH. Might mean something, might not. Doesn't look good if you're Tiger Woods.
Watching Magic's games, buying gas.
Clemson in a 4-man
Live from Columbia, this is Sports Talk on the South Carolina Radio Network. Be a part of tonight's show. Call us at 800-956-7266 or email talkback@sportstalksc.com. Now, here are your hosts for Sports Talk, Phil Kornbluth, Kevin McCrary, and Tom Hayes.
Hour number 2 of Sports Talk here on South Carolina Radio Network. Kevin McCrary and the Professor Tom Hayes at your service. Behind the glass, Graham Pope, pushing the buttons, doing everything he can to make us sound as good as possible. And there's only so much he can do.
There is a ceiling, gentlemen.
Yeah, there's only so much magic he can make back there. If you are tuning us in on one of our 30 or so affiliates around the state, thank you very much. Maybe you're listening to us online at sportstalksc.com. Maybe you're watching us online at sportstalksc.com on our live video stream. We appreciate that. You can interact with us on Twitter or just follow along on Twitter at SportsTalkSC, and on Facebook, find us, like us, Sports Talk Radio Network. Go to facebook.com/Sports Talk Radio Network, and that is exactly where we are. A couple of things to pass along if you're just joining us. The Bronco Nagurski watch list out, 3 Clemson players on that. Grady Jarrett, Vic Beasley, Stephon Anthony, and 3 USC offensive linemen on the Outland Award watch list. Senior guard A.J. Cann, senior tackle Corey Robinson, and junior tackle Brandon Shell. Also, Grady Jarrett, Clemson defensive tackle, he's on that list. So well represented are the Gamecocks and Tigers on those 2 award watch lists.
Do teams get points if they have many players on watch lists?
Yeah, I think South Carolina is now they're beating Texas A&M 6-0 now just based on watch list selections.
Well, I was talking about
season.
As far as strength of schedule and how many people you have on the watch list. Do they throw that in to decide who makes the playoffs? And it'll be
It's a factor. Condoleezza Rice is making note of everybody that's on this watch list so she can determine who she's going to put in that first 4-team playoff. If you missed it for the Braves, things just has not been a good week for the Braves. They've lost every game they played to the hapless New York Metropolitans, and their crusade to get people to vote via text message and Twitter hashtag for Justin Upton to get the final fan vote all-star slot came up short, and they lost out to a Chicago Cub. Another hapless team. Hapless teams have had the better of the Braves. Anthony Rizzo. I'm sure he's not Italian.
Well, it's time to spread the wealth around. They had Freddie Freeman last year. You're not suspecting that
Fred,
you're
and he blew away
Yasiel
Puig for that one. Braves Nation showed up, but maybe it was a little bit of overkill. Chicago White Sox pitcher Chris Sale is the other selection. All-Star break coming up next week. We're already halfway through the season. We're a little over halfway when you talk about games played, but we're at the midway point, of the unofficial midway point of the season when you talk about the Midsummer Classic, which will be in Minnesota next week. American League versus National League. Home field advantage in the World Series.
Outdoors.
I'm getting goosebumps just thinking about it. Yeah, outdoors.
You mean restaurant status? Did you ever see his at bat a while back, earlier this year? Oh, you never saw? Oh man, it's stuff of legends. You got to YouTube it real fast. Try not to fall out of your chair.
.247 Sports has the top SEC Heisman Trophy candidates. Nick Marshall is number 1 on that list. Todd Gurley is number 2. TJ Yeldon is number 3, the Alabama running back. USC running back Mike Davis is 4th on the list, and Dak Prescott is number 5, the Mississippi State quarterback.
Well,
Thoughts, gentlemen?
The interesting thing about this is that offensive line that South Carolina has should be solid this year. You got, as you say, 3 on the Outland Trophy watch list. It'd be interesting to see Matulis being plugged in at one of the guard positions. But it'll be interesting to see how defenses play Mike Davis, because I think early on, guys looked through their helmets and said, wait a minute, somebody that thick, that stout can't run that fast. And you could tell Georgia fans just took bad angles. I said, well, we can cut him off here. And then suddenly this guy, so it'd be interesting to see how they play him this year, and if he has to kind of tweak his running style, and how many carries does Williams get? Because for everything you hear, it's glowing that this guy is big and has exceptional speed. So he may have a better year at the end of the year, Mike Davis I'm talking about, because he'll have more people to rest him. I think he really just absolutely got banged up and ran out of gas as the season went on.
He had 203 carries last year. I think you want to get that closer to the 150 mark for Mike Davis if you can, to keep him healthy. Now, Pope, you raised your hands in the air when I mentioned Nick Marshall, number 1 on this list, the Auburn quarterback.
Nick Marshall, obviously a product. Will he ever even play a snap in the NFL? And you're talking about taking him over. I get it. It's a college award. But we're talking about the best player in college football, bar none, is Gurley. I mean, it's just the only question you have of Gurley is how long he's going to stay healthy. He's got that Clowney type effect. He is, bar none, the best player in college football, and it's not even close. I don't even know how you would, even mention Nick Marshall in the same category, ranking him above Gurley. The only question about Gurley is how long he can stay healthy.
Yeah, he only played in 10 games last year. Still almost rushed for 1,000 yards. Came up 11 yards shy of 1,000. He rushed for almost 1,400 his freshman year.
And as good as Gurley is, I really do think that Georgia underutilized him in the passing game. I mean, you let that guy out in space and hit him with a short pass, and then he's on a DB. I mean, that's 6, so it'll be interesting because he'll truck anybody that tries to tackle him.
Biggest weapon in college football, no question about it, next year.
Now, Nick Marshall, his passing never really impressed me, but he was dangerous. He's one of those guys that he fits the system, and he's going to be a guy that actually is in year 2 in this system, which isn't a luxury that you've had a lot with Gus Malzahn. He's had guys that are playing it for 1 year and then off they go. He had Cam Newton for a year. He went to Arkansas State, had one guy. He's going to have a guy that's been in his system for 2 years. But last season, he became the 4th quarterback in SEC history to rush for 1,000 yards, and he did that with Trey Mason, leading the league in rushing with almost 1,800 yards. Marshall also threw for 2,000 yards and accounted for 26 touchdowns. So, what he lacks in just being a polished passer, he does make up for in terms of his athletic ability and his shake ability. He's pretty elusive back there where he gets a little more time. And I know when you're watching it on TV, it's like he's just chucking it up there to somebody, but somebody's breaking free and catching it, and it works out. That offense that they run at Auburn, that Gus Malzahn offense, I think that's what frustrates people going against it and watching it. They're going, what am I watching right here? What are they doing? But it works. Well, and he plugs in guys, and it works.
That's year one. Don't tell me that they haven't gone over the film and they say, we're going to take this away. This is their least favorite thing they like to do. We're going to make them do this. It'll be interesting to see because that offense caught everybody because Gus Malzahn is pushing the ball up the field by throwing the ball. Nobody knew you could fast break running the football, but he pulled it off. There's all out of misdirection, and he had a lot of backs. If I'm looking at it right, if you read your keys, the offensive line, the hole is this way, but he's got the back going this way through a secondary hole. I mean, he pulled all kind of tricks. It'd be interesting to see that all these defensive coordinators have looked at the film and think they've devised a system maybe to stop it. I know Whammy said, well, if y'all would have won the championship, we had confidence in the world.
Whammy
we could stop them.
Which is it's a brilliant thing to say when you don't ever have to back it up. That's the beautiful thing. I could sit there and say, I could have taken Jordan in his prime if I had the opportunity. That's you don't ever have to back it up. I will. Auburn was absolutely rolling. They just were peaking at the right time, and that's what you want. And that's what happened in the 2010 championship season too, with Gus Malzahn, just the offensive coordinator that year. But they actually peaked in the SEC championship. That was as good as I think that offense probably played that year, and you saw flashes of it. They had that long hiatus before the BCS championship, and what team is going to continue that momentum? But last year, they just, they barely beat Mississippi State at home. They were just squeaking by, winning games, but then towards the end of the year, they were pretty much unstoppable again.
Well, I think from a mental standpoint, after that Georgia game, young players especially need a spark, and it's almost like they said, "Oh, this has been ordained. We're going to win it now. If we throw that miracle against Georgia, it's ours. We're ordained to win it." They haven't learned to take something yet. They'll have to take it this year because everybody be laying in wait for them this time.
Yeah, their offense, maybe they'll take a step back. That wouldn't surprise me when you lose some of the weapons that they lost and the protection up front. They do have a player or two, at least one or two guys on the Outland watch list. But defensively, Ellis Johnson, he has to be feeling better about this year than he did last year with a lot of the guys coming back. They were pretty young on defense last year, and they weren't a great defensive team last year, but they get a lot of those guys back, and I think he believes they're going to be pretty salty defensively.
It'll be interesting to see how he recruits while he's at Auburn, because Auburn always had their defense predicated on swarming. And what that meant is you had linebackers that were under 200 pounds, smallish safeties, and if you could get a running game like Alabama dominated them for a few years, you've run over them. I would think Ellis is looking for some bigger guys now in that defense. And wait a minute, this swarming's got to go. I got to have some guys that when they arrive, they're going to lay the wood to somebody. It'd be interesting to see going forward how Auburn recruits defensively.
It's the Heisman Trophy is such a fickle thing. You have to see how the season plays out, and the list change. This time last year, Jadeveon Clowney was being talked about as a Heisman favorite, and it only took about a half a quarter against North Carolina before everybody was crossing him off the list. But right now, on July 10th, if you could take any player in college football and draft them onto your team for this season, who do you take? Do you take Jameis Winston? Is that the obvious choice since he's the defending Heisman winner? Do you go Marcus Mariota? Pope, do you take Gurley? You said Gurley, not just SEC. You're building your team around Todd Gurley.
Absolutely, especially if I could throw the injuries out the window. If we're doing it on paper, I don't know how he's going to hold up long term, but
a healthy Todd Gurley. Yeah, you always assume you're taking a guy.
Not even close for me. Yeah, no question.
Pro?
Yeah, I would go with Gurley, and this is my caveat with Gurley. I really do think Georgia did not use him enough in the passing game. I mean, I get him out in space, and I don't care if you hand it off to him or throw it to him, an elongated handoff. Get him in space, and he can go the distance at any point. And he's just a combination. Let's face it.
He led the team in touchdown receptions last year with 6. Little known fact.
If we could compare him to somebody that people in South Carolina would know, he is a bigger, faster version with the mentality of a Marcus Lattimore. He will run over you and break the long one.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the big key. He can do either one. Almost like an Earl Campbell used to do it.
Almost ended up being a Clemson Tiger. Almost. Dabo Swinney thought he had him until Mark Richt started trolling him on the treadmill. Then he knew he didn't have him anymore. We'll be back.
Just Bobo. I mean, it's old school Mike Bobo stuff. That's how you knew USC was screwed the next week too, because you knew there's no way he wasn't getting less than 20 carries. I mean, they were screwed. Oh, that's still close. Yeah, still a great game. Yeah.
Sports Talk here on South Carolina Radio Network. Kevin McCrary and the Professor Tom Hayes. We were talking about Todd Gurley in the last segment. Great SEC running back. He and TJ Yeldon and Mike Davis, they certainly have a stable of great running backs. We played a little piece with Marcus Lattimore yesterday, going back home to the upstate and giving ESPN a tour around. Another little clip that we didn't get to play attached to that for time constraints yesterday was Yolanda Smith, Marcus's mother, who actually, I think this is the first time I've heard it, really go into details about what happened from her perspective when Lattimore went down against Tennessee his junior season, what ended up being his final play in a Gamecock uniform.
Normal day. We were just sitting there, and I was turned around. There was a play going on the field, and I was turning around taking pictures of the crowd like I normally do, reactions. I like those type pictures. And usually I'll turn back around after the play is over and watch the Jumbotron, and that's how I usually viewed the game.
Lattimore wrapped up by Lathers, and Lattimore is hurt.
All of a sudden, the stadium got quiet, and all eyes were on me. And I'm thinking, what's going on? So I look out on the field and I see someone's down. Then I look at the Jumbotron to see what's really going on, and I saw it was Marcus. But in my mind, I'm thinking, he's just got a cramp or something. He's okay. So I make a beeline, tunnel vision. And it was like people were parting for me coming out of the stands, and I'm going on over, and I'm standing there. And just because of the expressions on people's faces, it makes me more nervous of what's going on. I'm like, what is going on? Why are people looking like this? And so they wheel him off the field in one direction, and I go in the other direction. So I'm following it, trying to see which way he's going. So I start running, and I catch up with it. And I say, what's okay? What's wrong? And he said, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, Mom. I'm sorry. And I'm like, what? I say, no, Marcus, it's okay. So I'm still trying to figure out what's going on because I don't know what happened. I haven't seen anything.
This is your emotional leader, and you feel for him as a person and a player.
And then we get to the hospital, and they're telling me that there's possible nerve damage and he'll probably never walk again. I'm thinking all for a freaking football game. And by then, I feel like I can crumble. So I walk away from the door and I go into an empty room and I break down. I break down. In all of this, I've learned one of the greatest gifts that God has given us is to be able to serve others and to help others that may be put in the same situation that we've had to endure. I mean, good or bad. And had he gone in the first round, I don't think the same path would have been taken. I am thoroughly happy with how everything has turned out.
Now, very emotional, Yolanda Smith, even now. We'll be right back.
Let's go, Braves.
Well, good news for the Braves so far. First, they're not losing to the Mets, and we haven't been able to say that all week. It's still early, but Atlanta does have a 2-0 lead on the Mets. And a little more good news in Baltimore, the Orioles are leading the Nationals 1-0 in the second inning. Gio Gonzalez pitching for the Nats, or as I like to call him, Nat Gio.
I wonder how the
Don't shake your head, Pope. That was pretty darn. They should. The marketing department in Washington. I mean, it's better than the Natitude thing they use all the time. Nat Geo.
I'll give you Nat Geo over Natitude.
It'd be interesting to see if that's catching on. That sort of
the Natitude.
No, the Baltimore Washington Beltway rivalry, if there is one. So.
Yeah, I mean they could just rename the teams Democrats and Republicans, and
because at one point Baltimore
that's the biggest rivalry in
Baltimore
DC
didn't want Washington to have another team in there because they were the lone team for so long. You know, after the second edition, the Senators moved to Texas and became the Texas Rangers, that they wanted the territory to themselves until they found out, I guess, that they said, well, it's going to be a National League team. Well, I guess that'll work.
And that 1-0 lead by Baltimore, and this is a perfect segue for me because I wanted to mention this. Steve Pearce, the former Gamecock first baseman, he's homered in this one. He's hitting .322. When his final year at South Carolina, the Gamecocks, they lost in a regional. They didn't make a big run. They never made a huge run. He wasn't on a College World Series team, but he was by far the best player on their team and just an unbelievable hitter. I mean, I watched one at-bat where they were trying to get him to bunt a guy over, and he got 2 strikes and looked terrible up there, and then he just swung and knocked one over the fence and just kind of looked over the coaches like that's how I roll. Every pitch that he was getting, he was parking somewhere, hitting hard somewhere, and I was just amazed at what a great hitter he was. And watching highlights of him now on Baseball Tonight or watching the Orioles play, if I happen to be able to find him on MLB, that's what it reminds me of. He's seeing the ball like that now, and he's really figured it out, or he's in one of those types of zones, and he really is just a great baseball player, just a great hitter especially, and he kind of has a little bit of a, not as extreme, but kind of a Manny Ramirez personality where he just, go up there and just has see ball, hit ball, which is all it comes down to, and he was a very, very talented player for Ray Tanner at South Carolina. Now he is really finding himself with the Orioles, and he's hitting in the 2-hole, and I think he has 13 homers now. That's his 13th homer, and he hasn't been a regular in the lineup all season, so he's got a cluster of those homers, most of them probably from June 1st to now. That's how well he's been hitting the ball.
He's getting comfortable, and it's warming up. A lot of hitters don't start to hit. That sun starts to hit in the summer months, then you see them crank up. It seems like the bat heats up as the temperature gets higher.
All right, some other scores just to pass along. Pittsburgh leading St. Louis 1-0. Yadier Molina out for 8 to 12 weeks for the tough. Cardinals, so they'll have to replace him on the All-Star roster as well. But that's a tough break for a St. Louis team that has been hit hard by injuries this year. The Yankees and Indians scoreless in the first. Both those fan bases probably watching the LeBron James and Carmelo Anthony sweepstakes as much as they are the baseball game there, and mentioned the Braves leading and Baltimore leading. And Boston came from behind. They beat the White Sox 4-3 in 10 innings. At one point, the White Sox had a no-hitter going through 6, and Boston rallies to win that one. Oakland, a 6-1 winner on San Francisco. Oakland is just rolling right along right now, best record in baseball. And the Phillies, a 9-1 winner on Milwaukee.
Did you see the story in Oakland? This is interesting. And I didn't know this because it used to be an occurrence that happens all the time, but I guess with all the new stadiums being built, the Oakland Alameda County Coliseum, I don't know what they call it now, Synergy or whatever, but Energy Solutions or whatever, but they signed a lease, I think, for 6 or 7 years to continue to play in the Coliseum. Whereas the Raiders have introduced a plan to tear down the stadium. Now, in Oakland, the A's are saying, wait a minute. First of all, we're the best team that plays in this joint, and you've been struggling in mediocrity, and you're trying to tear the thing down? We just signed a 7-year lease. So it'll be interesting to see how that's handled.
They've been given permission to move if need be. Where would they move? What market would try to lure them in. I'm sure there's plenty of cities that would love to get a professional baseball team, but they have been given permission to move if they can't figure that thing out by Bud Selig.
Well, it'd be interesting that if a certain team, across the Golden Gate Bridge moving in their new stadium in Santa Clara area, if they can reconfigure that for baseball, maybe there's the second tenant. But I would doubt that the 49ers would want another tenant in that stadium.
All right, I wanted to mention this. I had it yesterday in my story stack, but we just didn't get to it. CBSSports.com did a best in college sports. They did their own version of what used to be called the Learfield Cup for a while. It might still be called the Learfield Cup. That's our parent company. It is still the Learfield Cup. Okay, need to make sure we get our parent company recognized. Now, the way they do it, when they give the Learfield Cup, is every sport's weighed the same. You get points, a certain number of points for winning a football national championship, but you get the exact same amount for winning a lacrosse. CBS Sports did it a little bit better, I think. They used the 5 big sports: football, men's basketball, women's basketball, baseball, and then a wild card sport. And the wild card sport was whatever the best sport at that respective school was among the following: softball, men's lacrosse, men's ice hockey, men's soccer, wrestling, women's soccer, or women's gymnastics. They just took the top ones there, and then they ranked the teams. Now, Stanford ended up number 1 on that list.
And Stanford also would finish near the top in the Learfield Cup because they play every sport, including tiddlywinks.
Yeah, and they win a lot of them, too. They get a lot of really smart athletes. They get all the best athletic, smart people
golf,
in the
water
country,
polo,
apparently.
tennis.
Michigan State was number 2. Michigan State, they won Michigan State has won some national championships as well. Not in any of the big sports, but they went to the Rose Bowl and won that. Louisville is number 3. Florida State is number 4. Baylor is 5th. Oregon is 6th. Oklahoma State 7th. South Carolina is number 8, despite the fact that they got nothing from men's basketball. Women's basketball certainly carried the day there in
what was their wild card sport?
Their wild card it doesn't say what their wild card sport was.
Equestrian.
Equestrian wasn't one of the options for wild card sport. I would have guessed women's soccer or softball probably would have been their wild card sport. Maybe men's soccer. I'm not sure, but it doesn't tell you what the wild card sport is. It just says for their wild card, they got 50%. And that's what is about. You look at South Carolina, they got 240 points for football, 0 for men's basketball, nothing for men's basketball, 64 points for women's basketball, 50 for baseball, and 50 for their wild card sport.
And, of course, with them being number 8, that's also the top team in the SEC, right? Because I didn't hear you call any.
They were the top team in the SEC. LSU was right after them at number 9. Clemson was number 30 on the list. They picked up 211.5 points for football, 20 for basketball, 0 for women's basketball. So women's basketball was the albatross for Clemson, and their wild card sport, 25 points for their wild card, or 25 for their baseball, and 25 for the wild card.
So, which was what, rowing?
Well, no, they fired their rowing coach. They have a new rowing coach they hired last week, by the way, but no.
No, okay.
It doesn't tell you what that is. But both teams, both major in-state schools in the top 30, and I was just surprised South Carolina was so high, despite the fact they got nothing from baseball.
Men's basketball. Yeah, with the women's basketball and the football and baseball kind of makes up for that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for Oklahoma State was 30 points ahead of South Carolina in the standings. But that's from CBS Sports. Everything's about a list this time of the year. We're almost out of list season and watch list season and into talking season, as Steve Spurrier calls it.
Do they have an award for best deep snapper?
Talking season starts next week with the SEC Media Days, Dabo Sweeney's golf tournament, ACC football off, and then the start of preseason camp.
Messi's the better striker, no question. But Ronaldo's the set piece, long range guy. Depends You got to choose which one you prefer. Yeah, he does look like a little rat off the street. He's just incredible. Yeah, he's a wizard. I think Ronaldo has a little bit more value because he's a little younger, too. If I'm not mistaken. I know Messi's definitely at the tail end of his career. I thought he was older than that. Well, never mind. I take all that back. Ronaldo's 29. I would have swore Messi was early 30s. I don't know. I thought Rooney was at least 30-something. Jesus, I'm way off. Of course, Rooney's been heralded since he was like 14, 15. Freddie Adu. Remember, all those guys came out at the same time. ESPN and Sports Illustrated were searching. Michelle Wee and Freddie Adu and LeBron were all at the same time. They were all the same era. They're all within a year of each other. Because LeBron came out and there was just no question he was going to be great. But everybody else wanted to find the other one in the other sport. Little 5'7" guy. Where the hell did you get that? Lionel Messi and Melanie Griffith. $70-something? Still get it.
Oh, this is my favorite part of the show when Kornbluth's gone, is doing the recruiting report. I mean, really, I should just read this every segment on a loop when Kornbluth's on vacation. He'll be back on Monday to do this himself. Thank God. We'll begin our recruiting report with the guy we've talked about a lot this week, and we'll be talking about him again later tonight and into tomorrow. It's R.J. Turner, running back out of Centerville, Virginia. We're going to be talking about him because as soon as 10 minutes from now, he's going to announce his commitment to one of these schools: South Carolina, Clemson, Virginia, Ohio State, or Michigan State. Now, Turner said in a text message this afternoon his announcement will be aired at either 8 o'clock or 9:30. So that leads me to believe, did he tape this, guys? Is that?
Yes.
So he's already done it.
Yeah,
he's
already
leaked.
done it. No.
He hasn't leaked this thing out. So he doesn't know if ESPN's going to air it at 8 o'clock or 9:30. And and it hasn't leaked out there anywhere. If it has, I admittedly I haven't looked
All
for
the
the
people
leak
that
anywhere.
would leak that sort of stuff are following LeBron.
That's true. That's true. Not as many leaks for A.J. Turner out of Centerville, Virginia, as there are for LeBron and Carmelo. So look for that at 8 o'clock or 9:30, or just head over to sportstalksc.com, and right when we get it, the second we get it, Kornblut will post it up at sportstalksc.com, and we'll tweet it out at sportstalksc. Defensive back Jeremy McDuffie out of Snellville, Georgia, has reconfigured his top 4. Florida is now number 1, followed in order by Duke, South Carolina, and Tennessee. McDuffie said that order is based on the visits he's taken to this point, of course, as is a case often, that is subject to change. He's going to visit Tennessee next week. McDuffie has 17 offers. He's expecting one any day from Kentucky, but right now he's just focused on the aforementioned top 4. He's also a nationally ranked hurdler and triple jumper. Wide receiver Jason Stanley's out of Fairborn, Georgia. He plans to name a top 5 on August 16th and then announce a decision on September 22nd. Clemson and South Carolina are both on his offer sheet. He's visited Clemson. Some of those other offers: Georgia, Auburn, Alabama, Kentucky, Tennessee, Wisconsin, Ohio State, and Kansas State. A couple of other quick hitters here. Wide receiver Auden Tate out of Tampa has official visit set with Michigan and Florida State. He wants to visit Clemson, Miami, Michigan State, and Georgia as well. He's a former Irmo resident. Defensive lineman Trent Thompson, he's out of Albany, Georgia. He told the Atlanta Journal-Constitution that he has a top 4 of Georgia, Southern Cal, Alabama, and Clemson. Some Georgia Southern fans got really excited for half a second there. No, it's Georgia, Southern Cal, Alabama, and Clemson. With the Bulldogs, his clear leader right now. USC was also one of his offers. He visited Clemson in April. And finally, a basketball note: 6'8" Chris Silva out of Roselle, New Jersey, was offered today by Kansas State. He also has an offer from former Kansas State head coach Frank Martin. That's our recruiting report. You can read these stories and more on the recruiting front at sportstalksc.com. So where is A.J. Turner going to go? Pro, you're a recruiting Nick. You know?
I have no earthly idea.
Pope, you know.
The people that do know or claim to know claim he's headed to South Carolina, so we'll see.
Yeah, and of course, if he wants to start right away, a team is desperate for a running back, it would be to stay home and go to Virginia. But I don't think he'll do that, because that coaching staff is on shaky ground, and nobody wants to sign on with a team where you think the coach may not be there the next year. The interesting thing about this recruiting season, I guess the Corn would tell us that the bounty is a little bit bigger in South Carolina for the 2016 class. But if you look at it, Clemson has a highly ranked recruiting class, and only 5 of the guys, I think about 19 or 20, are from South Carolina. South Carolina has about 21 in their recruiting class right now. Only 1 is from the Palmetto State. So it's interesting how both teams have been able to harvest players from outside of the state of South Carolina during a weak year.
Mm-hmm.
Be interesting to see what they do when the bounty is a little bit bigger next year with a lot of in-state players. I think they'll probably both be strong in-state next year with more top players coming out next year.
And despite that, by and large, South Carolina and Clemson have both been able to keep the guys that they want in terms of in-state talent, guys that they go after and offer and really want. 9 times out of 10, if South Carolina and or Clemson want one of those guys, they get them and don't lose them to an out-of-state team. You still have some that go out of state, but that's a far cry from where things were 10 years ago, where Tennessee or Florida State or Alabama, they would just come in and cherry pick. Well, we want this guy. Georgia, we want this guy. It's a lot harder to get in and get an in-state guy away from both South Carolina and Clemson compared to a decade ago.
Putbacks are primo in soccer. You're always looking for those. Stand by.
Oh, and finally, another no news is news update on the NBA free agency front. LeBron still in Las Vegas, where his camp is taking place. He's playing pickup games, which you can get live tweet updates from respected journalists that are live tweeting pickup basketball games involving LeBron James last night and high school players, today college players. But he's in Vegas with Dwayne Wade, still no decision. And Carmelo Anthony reportedly is going to re-up with the Knicks, but Phil Jackson hasn't heard from him yet, but remains confident that that is going to happen. If that's where you're going to go, just go. Why get that $129 million rolling into the bank account?
They're going to start, and maybe LeBron and Dwayne Wade are going to start an expansion franchise in Las Vegas while they're there. That'd be interesting. By the way, the team, I guess you could call it the local team, the Charlotte Hornets, they may be saved from embarrassment. I'm not saying the guy is not a good player, but I'm saying a max contract for Gordon Hayward, I'm not certain of that. But apparently Utah is going to match the $63 million.
And they could have had him. They could have had him for $13 million a year if they signed him in October. He was willing to take that. They said 12. He said 13. They said we're staying at 12. They didn't resign him. They put him out on the open market, and now they're going to pay him $63 million for 4 years.
Woo!
That's
See,
that
eats up your that eats up
drinking
the
the water
space.
in the Great Salt Lake. That's just ridiculous. But anyway, yeah, the Bobcats / Hornets / Fighting Michael Jordans won't have to deal with that big contract.
Again, Michael Jordan admittedly infatuated with guys who play well in the tournament. That does not correlate that they're going to be NBA solid players that need max contracts. But, if he's the type that's done that, and look where it's gotten him. It's setting him behind the eight ball.
The next great basketball move that Michael Jordan makes, it'll be this first, right? I mean, what has he done right?
Adam Morrison?
No,
Adam Morrison. There was a great pick there.
Yeah.
Adam, our concrete Kwame Brown. Everything with concrete
him.
Kwame. His brain was made of concrete. His hands were made of concrete. His feet were made of concrete. Concrete Kwame Brown.
He was physically gifted, though.
No, he's
looked great getting off the bus.
What was he said? When they drafted Adam Morrison, Jordan said he was box office. And then I think he meant he's going to work in the box office.
Yeah, I think that I saw Adam Morrison actually.
But they did sign the big guy from Utah last year. He turned out to be a solid player. Who's Big Al?
Yeah,
Al Jefferson.
Well, a blind squirrel finds a nut every now and then. He's fired through about 100 coaches. Wasn't good with the Wizards. I mean, he just greatest ever on the court. One of the worst ever off in terms of running a team. I mean, he's epically bad.
And then, of course, people not mentioning that LeBron going back to Cleveland. Cleveland has now hired a coach that hasn't been in the States in 25, 30 years. He's coached overseas.
He's big overseas, though.
Yeah, he is.
Coaching. All right, that's going to do it. Pro enjoyed it as always. Thanks to Graham Pope behind the glass. Have yourself a great Thursday night. TGIF tomorrow here on Sports Talk. See you then.